Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining Jeff Berkowitz and I as we're going to be looking at some of the major stories that we've covered in 2020 and carry them over and say, what should we be looking at as we go into 2021? And happy holidays. Merry Christmas to all of you. Thanks for watching. And don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think about some of the issues that Jeff and I will be discussing. And Jeff, as we sit here, we're going to get into this, but first, let me bring up that we have some breaking news happening right now. As we tape this, the Congress, the House is literally, as we tape this, voting on a $900 billion COVID relief bill that has been in the works since about August, and the President, Nancy Pelosi, who haven't spoken to each other in over a year, passed this off to Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin and some of her lieutenants, and they have a bill and it's going to be passed. And here's some of what it means. As we look at this, the people are going to get $600 stimulus checks per adult and child, $300 per week in enhanced unemployment insurance for 11 weeks. So that's $3,300 right there. $319 billion for small businesses, including $284 billion in loans through the Paycheck Protection Program, also $25 billion in rental assistance, and something landlords will maybe not be too happy about, an extension of the eviction moratorium, but it means that renters who are behind cannot be kicked out of their house. And lastly, we'll have $13 billion in increased SNAP and child nutrition programs, as obviously a lot of people have lost some of the income that they normally would have had and are having a problem paying their bills. So that's where we start. And obviously, Jeff, COVID is probably, I would say, most people would agree, the number one issue of 2020, even stronger than the U.S. election.
Really, since March of this year, Terry, as you know, we and everybody else have been fixated on COVID. And it's gotten worse and worse until the last few weeks when the vaccines started getting distributed. So now there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now we can see a period in which the great majority of the country is vaccinated, maybe even short of that. There'll be herd immunity, and people will hopefully, way before then, start returning to work, to their workplaces, as opposed to just remote learning, returning to in-person, to their workplaces as opposed to remote working, and returning to in-person education as opposed to so-called remote learning, which wasn't working at all. In short, maybe by March of this coming year, we will be back to normalcy, and we can put COVID behind us. Maybe that's too optimistic. Maybe it'll take till June, but as we'll see throughout this show, the dominant theme for the last 9 months has been COVID, and the impact and the decline on the economy and what to do. Often government makes things worse. They probably just did that again in the last few days. Basically, we could call that not a relief bill, but an unemployment bill. Those people, many people will be making more from staying unemployed than working. So unemployment will go up, which happened under Trump. And of course, it went up and down. Well, now unemployment's go up, and now the blame will go to the Democrats. Maybe it's fitting because they're the ones pushing this bill.
Well, I wouldn't say the Democrat. I think of this as a bipartisan bill. It's been, as I say, worked on since August. Both sides want a relief bill. There's a lot of businesses, as everyone knows, the hospitality industry has been decimated. Restaurants are been told to open, told to close, that you can eat outside, then you can't eat outside, depending upon the state. These people are hanging on by their fingernails. A lot of them are already out of business. So I wouldn't say this is just a bill being pushed for labor. It's also, as we noted, billions of dollars also for small business. It's a relief bill all around. It may not be it's certainly not a perfect bill, but it is some relief for people who have been unemployed and for some restaurants and small businesses who are trying to manage to hang on through this.
Terry, follow the data, follow the science. We knew in March of 2020 that this COVID is a disease primarily of the elderly, of comorbidities. We've nevertheless shut down the economy, sent a lot of young people who were at very low risk, if any, home. not to work or to work remotely. We've sent kids in school who had zero risk to home. We've basically created a major problem. We've killed the hospitality industry, and now we're giving people money, which we say will help offset the harm government caused. It's totally effing ridiculous. That's it, okay? Excuse my language. Totally. I mean, I'm just being square. I've been holding that.
What is ridiculous?
Well, the problem is we need to open up the economy. We've shut it down needlessly. We didn't protect the vulnerable. Half of the deaths from COVID came at nursing homes because we were distracted protecting people who didn't need it in the workplace and in the schools. And now we're saying we're helping the economy by giving money that will assist some restaurant workers.
Yeah,
let them open up.
Because it's a small business.
Hospitality. Well, let those people.
It's not just for hospitality. Hospitality.
Well,
is
retail outlets, whatever.
Look,
Terry, whatever you want to say. Excuse me.
Let's be clear. This is not. I didn't say it's just hospitality. Hospitality I mentioned because they've been the worst sector of the economy. However, remember, and you know this with your economics background, 60% of the American economy is driven by consumer spending. Consumers are going to have some more money coming into their pocket. We're trying to avoid going into a recession. I think that we've done a fantastic job managing through this so far. We've had unemployment come down to below about 7% right now. So
it's a pittance. It's a pittance relative to the overall demand that's in the economy.
You're trying to hold on.
Well,
this is not going to help that much. To people, lost in the desert. It means that they get to live to fight another day. That's what we're looking at. And then with the vaccines, we're also, let's remind ourselves, we got vaccines now being distributed and sent around. They're going to have 20 million doses out before the end of the year, and that's just within about a week as we tape this. We're going to have maybe as many as 100 million doses out for people to be vaccinated by the beginning of March.
Terry, before we go forward, let's go backward for a second. Let's take a lip. I think you have a clip of a show, an interview I did with Ted Dabrowski of Wirepoints in March of 2020, March 22, I believe. He was prescient. He predicted what this government shutdown would do to the economy. Let's listen to that, and then we can go forward after listening to that.
I know it's hard to predict, but in the same way that you see a lot of predictions of things get out of control with the virus, we should understand before we make decisions or while we make decisions how bad are things going to be for a place like Chicago and for a downtown like Chicago that's got 7,500 restaurants. What does it mean for all the workers there? What does it mean that if they can't have work for 2 months, what will happen? You've got 25,000 restaurants in Illinois. What's going to happen to them? Right? You're talking about the airline industry. You've got Boeing, you've got United Airlines right here headquartered in Chicago. What happens if it goes under?
And then there are all the feeders into the airlines, feeders into the automobiles. We're closing down for the next 2 weeks, GM, Ford, Fiat. And what about all the equipment feeders that feed into that? Right, so you're talking massive dislocation for jobs, for regular, ordinary people, we'll say. Not talking wealthy people. They're going to be hit.
Forget them.
But the middle-class people are going to have basically their dreams. The American dream is going to be disrupted.
What's going to happen to home values? What's going to happen to real estate values? Right? What's going to happen?
Okay, Dabrowski was right on point. Dabrowski of Wirepoints. The only thing he got wrong, he was a little too optimistic. He spoke of this effect for the next 2 or 3 months, and it's 8 months later than that show, or 9 months later, and we're still talking about it. Okay, and so it's been much worse. It's been devastating. It's a government-forced shutdown that needn't have occurred. And this thing you're talking about, this Keynesian jacking up consumer demand. It's piddling, it's tinkering, it won't do much. It killed the presidency needlessly of Donald Trump.
It might do enough to keep your business that you've been working on for 40 years alive. To say that you do
open up the economy.
Well,
excuse me, open up the economy.
Jeff, you open up the economy, but in the
meantime, you start saying outside.
We're not opening up the economy. Okay. In the meantime, we have restaurants who have been paying rent to their landlords for restaurants that have been closed down. They're thousands and thousands of dollars behind.
Terry,
they're trying to just get some relief to open up their economy or open up
Governor Newsom. if Governor Newsom in California can dine safely indoors, well, I guess the outside restaurants he closed down can open up. Stop being hypocritical. Governors, mayors, mostly Democrats throughout the country, do as you do. Tell people they can do as you do, not as you say. We can open this up safely. We should do it. Stop acting like an emperor, like a czar. Start acting like somebody who's been elected to represent the people.
You're talking about the governor of California.
Yes, but governors throughout. Governor Pritzker, okay?
Look,
not everybody.
Here's what we should say, I think.
Illinois
in the short
open
run,
up.
we're going to have this relief bill. Simultaneously, in the short run, we're going to be having vaccinations going on. I think the economy will have a rollout and be reopened. That needs to happen. We need to get the children back in school. We need to protect the elderly, get them vaccinated. The interesting thing is some people say that even if you're vaccinated, they still want you to be wearing a mask. So if we're going to have elected officials saying after we're vaccinated that we're still going to have to be eating in social distancing and eating 6 feet apart, that's not going to fly. I mean, you can't run an economy like this for 2 years where we're, shut down, and businesses who are shut down, they're just not going to be there anymore, no matter how much relief bills you pass.
Okay, but Sherry, let's just we want to go forward, but let's go back to the summer of this year. Let's go back to the riots, the looting, because that'll help set the stage maybe for the evolving economy going ahead in January of 2021. I think we have a clip. We have a clip of Kim Foxx. It's an important election. She was running for re-election for State's Attorney of Cook County, and she was running against Pat O'Brien. And we have a clip of her talking right after the looting, and she was talking about the looters. I think that's an important comment as to her perspective, Kim Foxx's perspective about looters and other people who violate the law. And this, I think, is on June 7, and she's talking about the looting going on. Let's take a look at that.
Hit hard by rioting and looting that crippled several businesses. If we don't look those young people in the eyes who stunt over broken glass to take things because they can't afford some of the things in their own neighborhood, it's wrong.
Pat O'Brien, candidate for Republican nominee for State's Attorney, Cook County. What's your take on what your opponent, the current State's Attorney, just said about that looting?
My first statement would be, what if the State's Attorney wants to be a social justice warrior? She should seek another job. So
there you are. There you are. That was Pat O'Brien. Fast forward, that was in June of 2020. In November, he lost 54-40. Some would say the voters supported Kim Foxx, who said her concern was for the people who are looting, those poor people. They had to step over glass to get what they couldn't otherwise afford. And then when she was asked yesterday on a TV show about the sharp increase in homicides in Cook County, and especially on the west and south side of Chicago, sharp increase in shootings this year, she said, "Oh, that's not me. I didn't do that. I'm not responsible. That's happening all around the country." And she cited New York and St. Louis. She cited a bunch of areas that have similar prosecutors who are social justice warriors who don't prosecute. That became more clear, although she's been there for 4 years. And this year, other things happen. But she says, "Oh, we have these problems of education not being fair, of housing not being fair." Well, we've had those problems before. Look, why did they just happen? The short of it is, and now I'll stop. The short of it is, this is a problem that erupted and disrupted this economy, this country, for all of summer and more. So you had COVID, you had riots, you had looting. We had terrible public policy. Man created, woman created, okay, if you want. And it could have all been avoided, and we're hoping to come out.
What is the policy that was terrible that you're complaining about?
Not prosecuting people who are violent criminals.
I just wanted to be clear. I didn't know you were talking about the COVID policy. So we have
Chicago homicides have gone from 500 to 750.
Everyone understands
that's terrible.
What's new is that we have prosecutors not just in Chicago, but in St. Louis, and L.A., and Philadelphia. George Soros is putting money behind these candidates. and up in Seattle. And they are prosecutors that are deciding they're not going to be enforcing the law the way it has been enforced in the past. In St. Louis, when you had people break down a fence to get into a private neighborhood, the McCluskeys came out of their house feeling threatened. They held guns, which they had a right to do, on their property to defend themselves. And what does the prosecutor, Kim Gardner of St. Louis, do? She prosecutes the gardeners who were threatened on their property by the people who broke into their neighborhood, not prosecuting the people who broke into the neighborhood, for heaven's sakes. We've had prisoners being released by judges across the land because allegedly of COVID. But who protects the population then when you're releasing people who are murderers in some cases, rapists in some cases? These are not people who have been in jail just because they were toking on a marijuana cigarette. So this, I think,
Portland,
is
Seattle.
this is going to be an issue going forward, I think, into 2021. It's not just something of the past, that the voters are going to have to decide, are you behind this and supportive of these prosecutors and this, what people would say is going easy on crime, or is that something you want to continue on with? But I think that's going to be one of the recurring issues.
We had a horrid situation with George Floyd, and that was used then as an excuse for looting and riots in similar situations. The black-on-black crime that people should be focusing on are the literally thousands of homicides, murders of blacks on blacks, not the very few homicides or improper or killings, improper conduct, misconduct, the very few such instances of cops doing that to blacks. Blacks' main concern throughout this country, especially in the low-income areas, as in the south and west side of Chicago, is that main concern, their fear is not of police. It's of other blacks who are not law-abiding as they are, killing them, robbing them, etc. So this is a problem. This is going to continue to arise. People should remember back to the summer, the riots and the looting, and that takes us to another law and order issue, because we now have the issue, looking back before we can go forward, of ComEd. Well, there's an issue of major public corruption. A major public corruption. I said it right.
Public and
private. Public and private. Because what did ComEd, as you know, Terry, because we'll take that clip of you, on November 18th of last year, there was John Lausch, the U.S. Attorney. He got an indictment issued against 4 individuals. It ended up being 5, but 4 individuals you're discussing then who worked for and with ComEd. Their CEO, 2 senior people dealing with PR, their longtime lobbyist, Mike McLean, the City Club of Chicago, President Jay Doherty.
Okay. 4 people who work with the House people. And to put this in context, earlier we already had ComEd plead guilty, pay a $200 million fine, the largest ever brought against a corporation, I believe, in the state of Illinois, or maybe even elsewhere. So, but anyway, ComEd had pled guilty. Then, as we say, the U.S. Attorney brings down an indictment of 4 people, and this whole ComEd scandal is over the question of, was there a quid pro quo between the Speaker's office passing legislation favorable to ComEd, and ComEd then doing favors for the Speaker and his political machine. That's what's at issue, still to be determined but in a court of law, but ComEd had pled guilty.
Well, those are allegations, but let's take a look, see if we have that clip of you reading from the indictment. So this is an indictment, okay? An indictment that comes out against these folks at ComEd. Now, Mike Madigan is not mentioned, is not identified as a defendant, but Public Official A, which everybody understands to be the Speaker, and you'll talk about this in a few seconds, Public Official A is not indicted, but he is a central part of the bribery conspiracy. Right. Maybe we can go to that clip now.
Efforts to influence and reward the high-level elected official identified in the indictment as Public Official A, again, widely believed to be Speaker Madigan, began in or around 2011 and continued through the end of 2019. During that time, Public Official A controlled what measures were called for a vote in the House of Representatives and exerted substantial influence over fellow lawmakers concerning legislation affecting ComEd. The charges allege that the defendants, and forgive me for just trying to read this on the fly here, the charges allege the defendants conspired to corruptly influence and reward public official A by arranging for jobs and contracts for public official A's political allies and workers in instances where those people performed little or no work that ComEd purportedly hired them to perform. Jeff, the reason that this is going to be meaningful to everyone is because House Speaker Michael Madigan has been the House Speaker, many people say the most powerful political figure in the state of Illinois for the last 35 years. And so now the question is, looking forward, will Speaker Madigan survive and be reelected as Speaker come January or not? Some people think he'll be making a New Year's announcement that he won't even be standing for Speaker again. What say you as far as what you think will come about?
Well, as we said previously in our recent show, it's going to be very, very close. He's got the House Black Caucus behind him. That's 22 House members. He's got 19 members who are so-called independents who are saying they will not support Madigan. He's got 45 Republicans in the House who are saying they're not supporting Madigan. So it's looking tough for the Speaker to get the 60 votes he needs. It's looking like somebody else will step in. And if he does get it, will he drag down Governor Pritzker, who's got to start thinking about his 2022 reelection? As people will remember, about a month ago, Governor Pritzker was dealt his first major loss. He lost on his proposed so-called fair tax. He didn't get it. Now he's got to face an Illinois budget deficit of $6 to $12 billion, however you look at it. He's got to start doing something about the $400 billion pension hole. He's got many, many problems. And does he want the headache of Speaker Madigan wrapped around his neck? I don't think so. So what's going to happen? I think Madigan goes. The forces are aligning against him, and too many people are going to be hurt who are Democrats, and they have the power, if they want, to get rid of the Speaker. That's what I say.
I think you're right, and I think the Speaker likely will not be the Speaker come January, and if he's not going to be the Speaker, he's not going to be a backbencher. Speaker Madigan would resign from the House, I believe, if in fact he doesn't have the votes to remain as Speaker. That would mean a new day in Illinois, or at least could be. Many people would have described Speaker Madigan as being the cork in the bottle, so to speak, where things just couldn't get done. Reforms couldn't get done that others have wanted to move along, a whole host of them over the last 35 years. So I can't predict exactly what it would mean for everyone in the state of Illinois, but it certainly would be a new day, and I think it would mean that Governor Pritzker would feel more free to act, and he didn't want to find himself in the same position that Governor Rauner was in or Governor Blagojevich was in, where they got on the wrong side of Speaker Madigan, and both of them were damaged in their governorship.
Well, and I'll just say we're going to move on to Trump-Biden, but before we do, let's remind people let's make another prediction. I'll make one. There's a new Republican Party emerging with new leaders, and it's already started, and the defeat of the fair tax was in large part with the funding of Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, which is a major hedge fund, and he's a major billionaire in Illinois, operating in large part now out of Florida. But out of all of that, that was a $50 million expenditure that helped defeat the $50 million that Governor Pritzker was putting into the fair tax. Will a viable Republican governor candidate emerge out of that? Will it be Gary Rabine, who we've discussed? Will it be Richard Porter, Kirkland Ellis partner? Gary Rabine, of course, is head of the Rabine Group, Ditch Digger CEO. Will it be Todd Ricketts, partial owner with the rest of his family of the Chicago Cubs? Darren Bailey, downstate state rep, who's been fighting with Pritzker, Governor Pritzker. Will it be Paul Schimpf, state senator? Will it be Adam Kinzinger?
Well,
I just mentioned 6 possibles.
The thing is,
well, that's not all
right
speculation.
I think there's right that there's a new Republican Party forming both at the national level and at the state level. Certainly, Illinois needs a Republican Party needs to be restructured. You just had Tim Schneider, the GOP chairman of Illinois, recently resign his position after I think 4 years or so. So here we are, and that's again a story that we'd have to be covering come up.
Maybe we can go. Maybe we can close with Trump-Biden election. No discussion of the past and the future is incomplete. Do we have that clip? Do we have the clip of two senators calling each other liars?
Yeah, I want U.S. Senate Homeland Security Committee. They were looking, Senator Ron Johnson, the committee chairman, had called the committee hearing to look into some of the allegations of voting problems in 2020, but also just in general. And he noted that in the past, in 2016, it was the Democrats screaming that the election had been stolen. And I think Senator Johnson, to his favor, is right in saying that we need to get this nailed down. And by the way, Jeff, let's remember that as we're taping this, breaking news also is how foreign entities are having a major cyber attack on the United States. And they have infiltrated, apparently, many agencies of our government. So the idea that they could break in and rig elections is not all that far-fetched. But here's what Senator Johnson had to say.
We're not going to be able to just move on without bringing up these irregularities, examining them, and providing an explanation, and see where there really are problems so we can correct it moving forward. Senator Paul.
Mr. Chairman, I got to respond to that. I mean, you're saying I'm putting out information. Well, one, it had nothing to do with this report.
You lied repeatedly.
I did not.
You lied repeatedly in the press that I was spreading Russian disinformation, and that was an outright lie. And I told you to stop lying, and you continue to do it.
Mr. Chairman, this is not about airing your grievances. I don't know what rabbit hole you're running down.
You talked about Russian
disinformation. Down rabbit
disinformation.
holes.
Senator Paul.
This is simply not what we're dealing with.
Paul.
But, Mr. Chairman, you can't make these
Judge
false
Starr.
allegations and then dropping it there. That is why this
Senator Paul.
needs to return back
Judge
to its
Starr, Senator Paul.
partisan things. This is terrible what you're doing to this committee and all the great work that you talked about.
It is what you have done to this committee.
It is not
falsely
the case.
accusing the chairman of spreading disinformation. Nothing could have been further from the truth, and you're spouting it again, which is why I had to respond. Senator Paul.
Mr. Chairman.
That epitomizes how divided this country is. The U.S.
courts have refused to hear these cases. Therefore,
great deliberation of comedy, of a club. Well, you can see that's all broken down. It's broken down in the country. Look, come January 20, I can make this prediction. President Trump will no longer be president. It'll be Joe Biden. I can make another prediction. What we saw going on there, look, Russia and China are major rivals, major military and, in the case of China, major military and economic threat. In case of Russia, major military threat. And this Biden family connection that was not allowed to be explored prior to the election and big tech shut down, we're going to hear about that, especially if in the runoff on January 5th, if the Republicans win those two seats, as many predict, they will have the majority. The Georgia Senate runoff, the Republicans will have the control, and we'll see this all hashed out, which didn't get hashed out. The fraud that almost everybody knows happened on the city level in Philly and Milwaukee County.
Okay.
Didn't get explored.
The point is we got plenty to cover. But Jeff will say goodbye and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you, and ladies and gentlemen, have a great New Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.